Hello everyone, I am Doc Erwin and this is Disaster, Readiness and Risk Reduction. MELC4, Week 2, Disaster from Different Perspective. So for our most essential learning competency, analyze disaster from different perspectives, including physical, psychological, socio-cultural, economic, political, and biological. Now, for our objectives, we have identify the different perspectives on disasters, explain different disasters perspectives, formulate helpful methods to face different disasters, and manifest readiness to face possible disasters. For your learning task number 1, under What's In, read and analyze the following situations. Write yes if it is a disaster and no if it is not a disaster. So you have to analyze each of the given situations. Number 1, a landslide in a mountain resort. Is it a disaster or no disaster? That is correct. The answer is yes, simply because it is a mountain resort. So meaning to say that there are a lot of people there that might be affected by the said landslide. Second, a typhoon traversing a remote uninhabited island. Is it a disaster or no disaster? That is correct. It is a no, because it is an uninhabited island. There's no one there. There's not even a single person is there. So that means that even if it is a strong typhoon, it will not cause any disaster since it will not affect any human being. Third, a volcano erupting 15 kilometers away from a city. That is correct. It is a yes. It is a yes because it is 15 kilometers away. And 15 kilometers is not enough for a safe distance away from a volcano that is erupting. Number 4, a mudslide towards a hillfoot community. Is it a yes or is it a no? Of course, the answer is yes, because there is what we called as a community at the bottom of the hill. Number 5, a strong earthquake in a city proper. What do you think is the answer? That is correct. It is a yes because it is an earthquake, a strong earthquake to be exact, in a city proper. Alright? So I hope that you were able to answer all the questions, and this can be found on page 19 of your learner's material. Now, this is learning task number 2. Read the poem found in your SLM. List down what you feel after understanding the poem. So, it can be found on your SLM, page 20. Okay? So do not forget to write your answer on your answer sheet or any paper that you are using in answering it. So these are the different perspective of disaster. So this is about what is it? Okay? So these are a physical perspective, psychological perspective, socio-cultural perspective, economic perspective, political perspective, and biological perspective. Okay? So let us analyze each one. So let us begin with physical perspective. So as stated, calamities are phenomena that cause great physical damage in a community infrastructure. Its people and their properties, example, houses, and environmental sources of living. These cited effects of a disaster can be easily measured and most common. So, how do we identify the effects of physical disasters? For example, injuries. So, how many people in the community were injured by a certain hazard or disaster? Physical disabilities or illness. So, how many among the population that are affected by a disaster has physical disabilities or illness? Or, let's say, is the sanitation um, plant or any sanitation measures were affected by the disaster and damage in infrastructure. Kadalasan, kapag may bagyo, nadidinig natin yung amount ng damages. And mostly, these are because of the physical perspective of disaster. Nasirang tulay, nasirang kalasada, gumuhong building, lahat yan ay may equivalent amount. Ito yung dinideclare, no? Sa mga balita, dinideclare yan ng mga government offices, government agencies, kung magkano yung approximate na halaga nung nasira ng isang bagyo. Okay? Now, let us move into psychological perspective. So as stated, disasters are mostly unpredictable. Okay? So most of the time, which leave the victims in a state of shock. So biglang taas ang ilog, biglang taas ang water level, biglang naglindol, no? So yung tao sa community can easily be affected by it. They tend to deny the loss and try to escape from reality. So ito, dinideny nila na namatayan, dinideny na nasira ang bahay. No? Being in a denial state makes the victim more vulnerable to stress, anxiety, and other different maladaptive reactions. So right now, no, nagiging part na ito ng assessment, no? And part ng work ng kadalasan yung mga taga DSWD, sila yung mga nagkakandak nito sa mga evacuation area, no? Lalo na sa mga bata, no, na that are very vulnerable when it comes with psychological perspective of disaster. So what are the psychological effects of a disaster? Andyan yung distress, intrusion or avoidance, hated or revenge feeling, guilt feeling, lack of trust, and hopelessness. Okay, so all of these are about psychological perspective. Now, let us move into socio-cultural perspective. So as stated, Filipinos are generally known as matiisin, resourceful, helpful, optimistic, and prayerful. Most of the time, we have this culture, malalampasan din natin to. And the belief that bahala na ang Diyos syndrome give hope to most Filipino in the midst of disaster. Ngayon, COVID-19 pandemic, no? So madaming sinasabi, sasabak na naman sa trabaho, sasabak na naman sa pagsakay sa jeep, sa tricycle, hindi natin alam, hindi natin nakikita ang kalaban na virus, no? Sabihin natin, bahala na ang Diyos or malalampasan din natin to. And we are known to be matiisin, di ba? So this is what we call a socio-cultural perspective of disaster. And these are the effects of that. So one is change in individual role. So yung mga dati halimbawa, namatayan, no, naiwan yung mga bata, so sila na yung naghahanap buhay. Okay? Or namatay halimbawa yung nanay nila, sila na yung tatay yung nanay doon sa mga mas bata nilang kapatid. Or halimbawa naman, namatay yung asawang lalaki, no? Yung babae na lang ang naiwan, so siya na yung magtataguyod doon sa family. Okay? So another is disruption of social relationships and personal connection. So kita natin ngayon lalo yan sa COVID-19 pandemic, right? So seldomly na nakakalabas tayo with our friends, no? Kasi bawal naman ang magsama-sama, bawal ang social gathering. Okay? So though we can still connect personally, but iba pa din yung nakikita natin ng personal, nakakausap natin ng personal, nakakasama natin ng personal, di ba? But right now, it is quite difficult for the reason that the situation here in the Philippines lalo na ay hindi pa yon ganun ka-possible. Okay? So these are socio-cultural perspective of disasters. Now, how about economic perspective? So as defined, disasters affect the economic condition of a community because they reduce local and international trade. So 'di ba? Kapag may bagyo, may kalamidad, may lindol, may pandemya halimbawa, no, hindi nagkakaroon ng maayos na palitan ng mga products, no, yung export and import na between countries. And ito yung actually bumubuhay kadalasan sa ekonomiya ng isang bansa. Kung mapapansin nyo, during the time ng lockdown, massive ECQ, noong 2020, bagsak ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. Okay? Kasi walang lumalabas, walang bumibili, walang nagbebenta, di ba? Walang namamasyal, sarado ang mga malls. So, in that case, bagsak ang economy. And it has an effect also. Okay, so this includes unemployment, 'di ba? Madaming nawala ng trabaho, madaming nawala ng hanap buhay, loss of property. So, bumagyo, no, nadala yung bahay, lumindol, nawasak yung building. Loss of household articles. So, ganun din, yung mga laman ng bahay natin, no? Hindi man nawala yung bahay, 'di ba? Nasira naman yung mga kasangkapan sa bahay. Halimbawa, bumagyo, binaha, nalubog yung television, nalubog yung mga appliances, 'di ba? Loss of crops. So tayo kadalasan, no, kapag may malalakas na bagyo, malalakas na lindol, pero kadalasan ito sa bagyo kasi gawa ng hangin, 'di ba? So in that case ay madaming nasisira ng mga crops, mga palay, mga mais, no, yung mga products natin. And loss of public infrastructure. Okay? So yung mga buildings, yung mga public buildings na ginagamit natin ay nasisira. Diba? Mga tulay, kalsada, no? Mga buildings. Yan. Okay, so for political perspective, as stated, natural disasters are commonly thought to be less politically argumentative than armed conflicts. Yet a closer look shows that both the effects of a natural disaster and the resulting distribution of humanitarian aid are profoundly linked to politics. Okay, so ano ba tong humanitarian aid? Ito yung mga tulong na binibigay, no? Halimbawa, isang bansa na mahirap, no? Padadalhan yan halimbawa, tutulungan ng isang mayamang bansa, padadalhan halimbawa ng mga goods, no? Dadalhin sa mga evacuation center, pantulong. Kadalasan yan ay kapag may mga war or di kaya kapag naman nasalanta ng isang disaster like typhoon. And since agencies of government have a significant role to play in directing disaster preparedness, prevention, and recovery. Okay, so political perspective pa din, since ang leading agency natin against disaster for disaster preparedness are actually government, 'di ba? Meron tayong NDRRMC, meron tayong local version ng NDRRMC. Okay? So andyan yung preparedness, prevention, and recovery. Social systems establish vulnerability to natural disasters, and governments are often considered to be responsible for disaster effects. Okay, so it is the task of the government to prepare a community. Okay, so sila ang may resources, sila ang nasa position, sila ang may ganong offices that are in charge when it comes with disaster. Okay, so that's why there is what we call as political perspective of disaster. Now, when it comes with biological perspective, as explained, the disturbing effects caused by a prevalent kind of disease or virus in an epidemic or pandemic level is known as biological disaster. So, I think this is very explanatory. I think this is also very timely because what we are experiencing right now is the biological perspective of disaster. Okay, so there's a virus, no, COVID-19, and a lot of variants already, no, and that's why the case is already in pandemic level. So tingnan natin yung different levels. So epidemic level, biological disaster affects large numbers of people within a given community or area. Example, dengue. Okay, so kadalasan kapag madaming let's say in one community, in one barangay, or in one town, no, one municipality, it is only what we call as epidemic level. Okay, now that we are in pandemic level, biological disaster affects a much large region, sometimes spanning intercontinents or the globe. So this is a worldwide problem, no? Kahit saan ka naman pumunta, halos pumunta around the world ay may COVID-19. So that's why it is declared by the WHO, the World Health Organization, that COVID-19 is already pandemic level. Nung mga panahon na bago tayong mag-lockdown last year, 2020, dineclare yan. And until now, still it is in pandemic level. So let us now go into what's more. Learning task 3, watch or read. Okay, so watch this video from the YouTube entitled Philippines President Threatens to Shoot Dead, quote unquote, Coronavirus Lockdown Troublemaker, or read an article about public health emergency in the Philippines. If you do not have internet access at home, then answer the questions given. Okay, so it can be found on the 23rd page of your SLM. So you have two options. Pwede mong panoodin kung may internet ka, no? Or pwede mo namang basahin kung wala ka namang internet. Okay? So, what I have learned. So, learning task number 4. Study the situation about a disaster. Analyze and answer the given questions. So, let us read. Tajima is an earthquake victim. She manages to save all his family members from the wrath of the disaster. Though she is mentally tough, all her resources are already gone. If you were to rank the following needs of Tajima from the most important to the least important, how would you arrange the following needs? Justify your answer. By the way, it is found on the 23rd page of your SLM. Now, that is the situation, okay? So, on this slide, I want you to arrange them according to most important and least important in the situation of Tajima. So, you have to consider the situation in order before you arrange the different need of Tajima, okay? Okay, so you can write your answer on your answer sheet so that when you return the activity, may sagot ka na. Okay? Now, this is the last one, which is what I can do. This is learning task number 5. Recall the devastation Super Typhoon Yolanda. List down the harms it brought to the community and tell how people can cope up from it. Okay? So, it doesn't necessarily na naapektuhan ka ng Yolanda kasi malayo naman dito sa atin, no? But let's say, yung mga kababayan natin dyan sa part ng Tacloban, sa part ng Bicol, no? So, since ito naman ay nabalita, so mag-identify ka nung effect nun sa community. And then, you have to discuss how people were able to cope up from it. Okay, so ilang taon na din naman na nakakalipas, di ba? So nakita na natin kung paano umuling bumangon yung mga naapektuhan. Okay, so the details are found on page 23 of your Pivot 4A Learners Material. Okay, So that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching our video. So this is again MELC4 for under week 2 of the RRR. Thank you so much and ingat po tayong lahat.